Good morning. Thank you for standing by and bearing with our technical difficulties today. Today is Saturday, May 30th, and this is Pushback. This is a show that is geared to the person that is looking to better understand what the values of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights are and how government should operate within them, and what our role as the sovereign means. Even though we're outside the ruling class, we get to vote. And I don't think that I've ever felt more like that is the strongest solution to the problems that we're having today. And with me today is Todd Bartlett and Robert Knorr, our co-hosts. And welcome, guys.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Good morning.
And I guess the primordial question that I have today, and today's going to be a busy day because we have a lot of topics. There's a lot of things going on. Is that have you ever wondered, Robert, why the executive power in the Constitution is Article 2 and the legislative power is Article 1?
I have wondered that, and look, that was the entire idea. Obviously, we wanted separation of powers and checks and balances on all three branches, but Congress is closest to the people. In fact, the House of Representatives closer to the people than the Senate, which is also closer than the executive branch. The same is true at state levels as well. And that's because we, the people, have direct influence theoretically over that legislative branch. And it's more of a representation of us at the local level, as opposed to just having one leader that represents us all. So they're supposed to create the laws, and that was Article 1 because that is the most important branch. Unfortunately, they are all but worthless, as we've seen an expansion both at the state and federal level of executive power, and that means that our voices and what we vote for basically become null and void.
Right. Todd, if the governor is the strongest thing in the state government, then the governor is also the most dangerous thing. Separation of powers is the biggest single protection in the Constitution. What are your thoughts regarding that statement when you have daily briefings with the governor and how he has handled that power?
So, guys, what happens is you have two deliberative bodies, the PA House, PA Senate, right? And they work up bills and resolutions, and they pass them with simple majorities, and then they send them to the governor. And the governor, with the stroke of a pen, can veto those. So then it goes back and they vote on it again, and they need that, 2/3 to 75% majority to overrule the veto. And because of partisan politics, the way they are right now, we're just not seeing a consensus to overrule a governor, whether it's a Republican or Democrat of the party, based on who has the most seats in the House or the Senate at the state level.
Right. So, to talk about that today, we've asked Lycoming County Commissioner, Lycoming County, Pennsylvania Commissioner Tony Mussare to come on the show today. We've had some technical difficulties in trying to get him on, and I'm certain that Todd will let me know when he's on.
Yes.
And so we'll continue in this vein, in this conversation, or in this subject matter. So, in Lycoming County, the county that Todd and I are in, and I guess maybe I should have Robert come in and just give a quick overview of what the phases are in the state with respect to the reopening stages that the governor has set. Can you talk a little bit about that? Also, start by telling us what's happening in your county, Clarion.
So Clarion County, I believe we've had 26 cases of COVID, 2 deaths, I believe was the number. It went green, phase green yesterday. So that was when we went to phase green. So for those of you who don't know, the way it worked in Pennsylvania was originally Tom Wolf, our governor, who's a Democrat, by the way, said, we're going to do a county by county approach. He switched that and just locked down the entire state. Then he switched back to what we have now, which is a county by county approach that goes by phases. it started in phase red, which is, for all intents and purposes, the same total lockdown you've seen in these other states. You could go get groceries. That was about it. Then it went to phase yellow. Phase yellow still had a bunch of closing of non-essential businesses, and essential businesses, you still had to practice social distancing measures, had to have people at limited capacity, and things like that. Phase green is a further lifting of those restrictions, so almost all businesses could be open, but they have social distancing restrictions, some of which are very nebulous, as I'm sure we could talk about, Carlos. We both talked to business leaders that say, we have no idea what phase green means, so we're afraid to open up because we're afraid we're breaking some law. So that's what we see when it comes to these phases. The problem is, Governor Wolf and the Secretary of Health Levine have never been accurately able to articulate to the people exactly what these phases mean, and even worse, what the criteria is from moving from phase to phase. So, for example, we have Sullivan County that's right near Lycoming County here. It's had 2 cases of COVID this entire time, yet it went through the same phases of red, yellow, green. If only having 2 cases wasn't enough to be green, then what is the criteria for going green? And I know, Carlos, something we'll be talking about with Tony today is it seems completely arbitrary that Lycoming County has been kept yellow while surrounding counties such as Center County have been made green. There's no rhyme or reason to it, and it's just tyranny taking away people's livelihood and their rights.
When you say tyranny, I understand that. I understand what that means. But there's such a large, broad scale of people out there that don't really understand what you mean by tyranny, and it's a word that's used very imprecisely, I think, in a lot of people's minds. They kind of know what it is. They kind of know it when they see it, but just give us a little bit of a deeper insight as to what it means when you say tyranny in the form of the government using that or applying it.
So government using tyranny would be taking away your God-given rights. We have the greatest country in the world because we have the best foundational document, which is the Constitution. Right. The Bill of Rights outlined in it said things like you have the right to peaceably assemble and protest the government for grievances. You have the right to, have a livelihood, the right to worship as you see fit. Tyranny is when a government, without your consent, takes away those rights. So that's exactly what we're seeing here. They've stripped us of our First Amendment rights. They've criminalized behavior that is just trying to feed your family, trying to go to work, trying to go to your church. And they've done so in an arbitrary, and even worse, the reasons they've done so was for personal benefit. So that's the tyranny I'm talking about. It's not asking Pennsylvanians or Americans to sacrifice on a temporary basis. It's arbitrarily enforcing taking away people's rights without their consent.
So, Todd, you're at the battle lines, of the communication battle lines between the government and the people. And what is the best example of this type of tyranny that Robert is talking about, that you've witnessed from your point of view as a journalist, talking to the governor's office and the health department's office and Secretary Levine being the health secretary in the state of Pennsylvania?
So for me, guys, it's the openness and the forthrightness in the press conference. You know, when you're asking for specific numbers, and one of the phrases that's often used is, I don't have the granularity of the data. I mean, it's a pretty simple thing. It's your database. It's pretty readily available that it can be called up in real time on the screen, or even, have an iPad or have a virtual screen at the podium. That's been really disappointing.
Why wouldn't you be prepared, right? I mean, they're going to ask you the questions.
I get it when you're getting into the Sullivan counties of the world that have 2 cases, and
right.
You know what I mean? But when you're talking about the top 10 counties, that makes it a little difficult, right? When you're not getting that type of granular detail. And I believe if technology has cooperated here this morning, I believe our very special guest is on.
I think that we have him on mute, if I'm looking at the screen right. But Commissioner, are you there?
Yeah, if he can unmute his own line, that would.
He'll get to it. We'll see when he unmutes it. But yeah, Commissioner, just unmute your own call right now. For some reason on your end, it's showing up as muted.
Right. So.
Now let's try.
There you are. There you are.
Okay.
Well, I'd like everyone to welcome Lycoming County Commissioner Tony Mussare, who is my county commissioner, but I am proud to say also my friend. How are you this morning, Commissioner?
Fantastic. Technology doesn't always, help me out here, so it's not my friend.
We have a phrase: technology is great when it decides it's going to work for us.
Exactly right. But it's okay. We'll make it through. Commissioner, I'm here with Todd Bartlett, that, as you know him, and Robert Knorr, and we'd like to welcome you to the show. We were just discussing briefly before you got on the fact that, in the Constitution, Article 2, which is the executive power, let me claim this. The executive power in the Constitution is Article 2, and the legislative power in the Constitution is Article 1. I think that there is a reason why Article 1 comes before Article 2, very much like in the amendments, that the First Amendment is the most important amendment. We wanted to have you on to speak to those ideas as a representative of the government that's basically closest to the people, and to talk about basically the trials and tribulations that you've had to suffer in the last 2 months regarding the COVID. And I guess the very first question that we should ask you is, can you give us a general idea of when you think of COVID as a county commissioner and a government official? What are the first things that come to your mind, and give us a hierarchy of what's important?
Well, when it comes to COVID, well, there's so many different ways to describe my feelings. From a commissioner's standpoint, a representative of the people, and from a business owner's standpoint,
right.
Very, very frustrated with how everything has been handled. And I don't like to put blame on anyone, because when COVID came out, it was very contagious is what they said. It was deadly, and I'm not sure if they actually knew everything about it. But we kept getting reports from the Department of Health, and things changed every 15 minutes. So, from that perspective, it was new to everybody. And we were all very concerned. So, the governor took the appropriate action that he felt that he needed to do. And, in hindsight, we can say he made a few mistakes.
So could you before, and I know Robert and Todd have many questions, but could you quickly give an assessment of what Lycoming County did, based on your memory, in the last 2 months to be able to comply above and beyond the concerns that the state had on the county? What did Lycoming County do?
Well, we had a number of things, because remember, the judicial is a separate branch of government. And so we were getting, or the judicial court system was getting their orders from the Supreme Court. And so they had to close down their courtrooms. And we have the pathonetary and the register and recorder in the same building. And they closed down their services to our constituents. And they are two huge departments. They are also elected. They're row officers of the county.
Right.
So they're elected positions that we have no control over. And what did that do? Well, it shut down everything. You couldn't make any real estate transactions, do any refinancing when it came through to the pathonetary, any history checks. So we had to start to, improvise. How are we going to provide those services and provide the safety that's required not only for our people that work at the county, but for the public? And that did take a few weeks.
So, but safety-wise, specifically, what was on your mind? What were some of the measures that you took that safety-wise to be able to combat this?
Okay, well,
In
everybody
terms of
obviously
in terms of preparedness and things like that.
yes. Well, the first thing is, and I need to tell you this, that we run scenarios all the time. We all different types of scenarios when we're out there doing our op plans. So we always said mass casualties, or we're at the Little League World Series, and we've always checked, PPEs. We checked everything, but we never looked at it from a global standpoint, a global pandemic, to where, we had enough to handle our mass casualties, but not much more than a day or two.
Right.
And so our stockpiles were there, but we realized that no, not for months, and that brought awareness to us. We knew that was a deficiency. But we improvised. We had a stockpile. We went to FEMA. They provided some, from the FEMA from the state, provided some more of the PPEs to us. And in the meantime, the people of Lycoming County and those businesses stepped up to the plate and started making cloth masks.
Right.
Okay, it was just incredible what our people did here.
Were we ever in jeopardy of running out?
Oh yes, absolutely. It was a scramble, but you get different reports, and there was the confusion. Okay, it lives on this for 3 days. It's airborne. Well, it's not. It's droplets. I mean, there were so many different conflicting reports. You didn't know how to prepare. Okay, and that went on, like I said, every 15 minutes something changed. So, we did have some difficult times there.
Did that ever hurt us in terms of preparation, the conflicting reports? Were we ever, were there consequences to that? Or was it just a worry?
It was a worry, but there were consequences. What it brought was confusion.
Gotcha.
And once you start becoming afraid, then your communications, your service, your employees and your staff, they're not sure what they want to do now, and that's part. That was very troubling.
Robert.
Well, we don't want to come. We don't want to come to work because we don't want to die.
Right.
So it's not the risk of dying for much. It was just the fear of not having the right things or being infected. And I guess, you and I are different people, Carlos. We're a little tougher. I believe so. I believe that, until I see what's going on, I'm not going to be afraid of much of anything. I will take precautions, but I'm not going to stop working or whatever.
So, Commissioner Rob Knorr here. Thank you so much for being here. I was against the lockdown originally. I'm against the continuing lockdown, but we can get to that later in the conversation. Let's talk about, the lockdown happens. No, what was the next step? My question, going along with what you just said, we saw that Tom Wolf came out initially and said, we're going to be working directly with officials and health professionals, county by county. Do you think that Governor Wolf and his administration and the Department of Health have been transparent with you as a county commissioner or with health professionals in your county?
No. I believe there could have been a much better communications. And a matter of fact, the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania, we were doing everything we could do as an association to get a position at the table, because who better knows their counties than us? We know what our emergency service people are doing. We know what the population was doing, and we are all unique counties in one way or another. I was probably the only one that was in favor of a county by county opening. The association didn't take that position. They took the position of a regional opening. Okay, we'll do it in regions. And that was probably the Wolf's administration as position as well, because he felt, well, I closed them county by county, and I should reopen them county by county. But what was very frustrating was the fact that I don't know where he was getting his data. Okay. Even today, they use models such as the Carnegie Mellon model. And I asked the CEO of UPMC about this, and they said, well, no one called us. That's not right. So they were getting some data. Maybe it was old data, but it was incorrect. And if you're going to be making decisions on opening or closing, you need to have the right data. Forget about the model. If you don't have the right data, how do you plug it in? That was very frustrating, and especially from a county's perspective.
Yeah, and let me just say real quick to speak to that. Here in Clarion County, my neighboring county is Jefferson County. Because county officials and county health professionals weren't contacted, they were left to go on the same rhetoric that we saw at the state and national level that said hospitals are about to be overwhelmed. This is just one incident. My brother has terrible seizures, went to a hospital in Jefferson County that at the time had 0 reported COVID cases, yet they rushed him out after 30 minutes, which caused him to have another massive seizure, all because they were listening to the rhetoric coming out of Harrisburg that said, oh, your hospital's about to be overwhelmed. And so I think that what you see county by county, instead of looking at things and doing, as Tom Wolf, he knew that it was important to talk to county by county and to talk to the commissioners and health professionals. His lack of transparency has led to not only economic suffering, but actually medical suffering, because we were left to have this one-size-fits-all approach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you anymore. Unfortunately, we had a number of suicides, and we know for sure that there were 3 suicides that were attributed to this. All 3 of them left notes, and that's why we know that. And it was about medical. They could not take the pain anymore. They were so afraid of going to the hospital that they just said, I can't take the pain anymore, and committed suicide. And when we talked to our healthcare professionals, there were many more deaths than that. There were many deaths where people had symptoms of a heart attack and would not go out because they were afraid that they were going to die from that, and they died of a heart attack. I mean, it is sad, and I blame that on fear. And to them, it was justifiable because what they're hearing nationally and on the TVs and whatnot. But they weren't going by the data. And even from after day one, you still have to try to see what happened that day. Was it that bad? And no, we never even came close to numbers.
Todd?
Commissioner, can we go back in history about a month, 45 days ago? And you talk about the data, and one of the most troubling things is accurate numbers, right? So Coroner Kiesling gets a phone call from me saying that for the first time in the COVID crisis, Lycoming County has 2 COVID-19 deaths. And as we came to find out from our exclusive report, that particular day and then the days subsequent to that, Lycoming County had no COVID-related deaths or coronavirus-related deaths. In fact, the numbers were flawed to the point that the Department of Health had to revisit those numbers and retract over 200 COVID-related deaths in one day. Could you speak to that and the amount of data and what Chuck has done, and then your advocacy work with the state level group with commissioners, and then also trying to get that seat at the table as well and expand upon that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to congratulate you, Todd, because you are the one that brought up the question. Okay. And then since Carlos and I have a very good relationship, I didn't know. And you had called Chuck, Mr. Kiesling, and he was unaware. And I thought, well, this needs to be, sent out. And so with my good friend Carlos, I took Mr. Kiesling up to his house, and he got it out. And boy, I think it went viral pretty quick. Okay, but the data, and that's one of the problems, because there remember, this is the first time this has happened. I don't want to say the first time it's happened to us, but that we were this afraid. And so the state has a way of gathering their own data. The county may have a different way. Is this person from Lycoming County? Were they visiting here and is in our hospital and died? We don't know if that came from Lycoming County, even though they're not a resident. So you were having numbers all over the place. There's a lot of confusion on how to register the data, and nobody had a plan. And that's why you saw that number of deaths change so drastically. Well, how can you, Mr. Keisha said, well, how can you say that that's a death? Not to mention the frustration of a probable death. So there were many people that were being recorded as COVID deaths that were probable, and they counted them as a COVID death. Well, they never got tested. So how did they really know? And I think that was one of the first corrections. But it came after a very long time. Another concern, is how are we reporting it? We do it in the aggregate. So at the time, we were currently, we had 161 cases, of which 80-something were from the one home, But if we did a 14-day look back, we had 31 cases that were active, not 161.
Right.
So the numbers that we're seeing are not accurate. They're lower. And the more you test, the more tests that are available, that means the higher the percentage should be, right? If I only had 20 tests to give to people, and my numbers were going up, and now I have 1,000 tests I can give, and my numbers are going down, we're hitting more of a population. So it is drastically being reduced, the numbers. So we feel very good about this,
Commissioner, I do have a follow-up real quick, and then back to Robert and Carlos. When you saw Center County go from yellow to green, right, and it's the home of Penn State, the NCAA had just come out and said students can return to campus as of June 1st to begin training and everything else. Everybody gets how big Penn State football is in the Commonwealth. It's an economic driver. When you see that they're very similar in case count to Lycoming County, and Lycoming County still sits in the yellow when Center County's going to green, did the thought cross your mind and your fellow commissioners in Lycoming County that maybe, just maybe, because of the critical nature of what's been coming out of Lycoming County from Coroner Kiesling, yours truly, you guys were very outspoken about it in your advocacy efforts as well, that the word political may have entered the conversation?
Well, I have two opinions on that. When I was very happy that Center County, went back to green, because I love football. Beyond that, we were pretty upset. And the reasons why is our numbers were showing that we fell within all the matrix that this governor was supposedly going by. And then when we personally had a call with the Department of Health, it may have been 3 days ago now, we expected more information than what they gave us. And a matter of fact, Commissioner Maravito said to them, wait a second, you knew what the meeting was about. Okay, how don't you have these answers for us? They're not.
And he's a Democrat.
And he's a Democrat. And he's I am I'm proud of my colleague. He's a good commissioner. But when their unpreparedness is, I just gave you another example of how bad the situation is in the State Department, as far as I was concerned. Okay,
Robert. Robert, could you underscore the commissioner's feelings with respect to Center County with the data that you uncovered the day before yesterday regarding Lycoming and Center County?
Yeah, so according to the official PA Department of Health numbers as of 2 days ago. Now keep in mind, if you're not familiar with the area, Lycoming County and Center County, both in central Pennsylvania, they neighbor each other. Lycoming County has a total of 161 cases. This is of 2 days ago. Center has 148 cases, so roughly the same. Deaths, you've had 16 in Lycoming County and only 6 in Center County. Now, it sounds like, oh, okay, so there's more deaths in Lycoming County, therefore maybe that's justification for keeping it locked down. But not really when you look at the specific details, and here's why. First, anyone who thinks 16 deaths versus 6 deaths is reason to open one county up and the other to shut down needs to really think that proposition through. But the other thing to know is 100% of the deaths in Lycoming County have been from nursing homes. 0% of the deaths in Center County have been through nursing homes. And think of what the transition from yellow to green means. It basically means opening up businesses like your hair salon, your restaurant, your bar, places like that. How is keeping those places closed in Lycoming County going to protect people in nursing homes? It makes no sense whatsoever. If you were going to take that tactic and say, well, hey, a difference of 5 or 6 deaths could mean the difference between opening a county or shutting it down, then if anything, you would shut down and keep Center County shut down because the people dying there actually weren't in nursing homes. So the data just doesn't make sense. And when you start to look at it this way, all of a sudden the fact that, like you were just talking about, Commissioner, and Todd was referencing, the fact that we actually had folks in Lycoming County like yourselves, like the coroner, stand up and make what became a national story, proving that we had proof that they were inflating the numbers of dead from COVID, and it got egg on the face of Governor Tom Wolf. All of a sudden, it seems mighty suspicion that Wolf would arbitrarily say, Lycoming County, you have to shut down, even though your neighboring county, Center County, their numbers suggest they should shut down longer than you.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I can't say that any better than that.
Well, at least the data is not inaccurate. The interpretation of the data is what's inaccurate. Don't you think?
Well, that's true. It's true if you go by the aggregate, and we should not be. If we should be, these are the active. This is how many people have that have it positive test results. Which right now, I believe that the positive test results are below 20, below 25 now. Okay, that's data that I believe is inaccurate when you're trying to open up your communities and get your businesses back. You know, you need the real numbers, not the aggregate numbers.
Now, just real quick, let me just remind our audience again. In Lycoming County, there have only been 16 deaths. And they're still having it in phase yellow. All of those deaths were from nursing homes. Particularly, I think one nursing home in particular had the majority of the problems. Governor Wolf's policies forced nursing homes to take COVID patients. So he knew that it was the most vulnerable populations, and yet he forced COVID to be contained and spread there, which predictably led to deaths in those areas. Because of those deaths in those areas, he's now punishing the good people of Lycoming County, saying, you can't be open because of these deaths in nursing homes that died directly because of his policies. That's the sort of asinine things I'm seeing. And again, I want to ask you this, Commissioner. You mentioned that you've had personal talks with medical professionals in your community and in your county about other deaths that were resultant from these lockdowns, such as suicides, such as people being afraid to go to medical facilities because the fear-mongering that was unjustly being spread about this disease. We're talking about 16 people in nursing homes that died of COVID. Every death is a tragedy. Don't get me wrong. But many of these people had comorbidities and were in poor health anyways. Could it be the case that actually more than those 16 people have passed away because of the lockdowns in Lycoming County?
Oh, there's no question about that. And I'm just going to touch base on that comorbidity. It is that... of those 16 deaths, let me see, there were 5 that were over the age of 90, and 10 that were over the age of 85. So that left the rest, and there were two in their 60s, 66 and 60 some, and the rest were in their mid 70s and late 70s. But they all had preconditioned conditions, and which were very bad. So, I'm not going to criticize them there, but this is what happened. It's not just the death. Abuse. Can you imagine being locked up and you're in an abusive relationship? How about the children that are our parents, are drug addicts? How about the drug addicts that overdosed, and we had a tremendous amount of them overdose? The consequences that this lockup had far outreached what COVID did to us as a nation or as a community. And that is something that we have to never forget. Okay. By the way, personal responsibility. And Carlos, you were one. You made sure that you felt that you were safe, and you weren't going to do anything until you felt that way. That's personal responsibility. And that's what we need from our county now. We need from the county residents. What I'm really afraid of more than anything right now is that you may have attorneys hiding and lurking behind bushes and trees, going into bars, seeing who's complying. If anybody's not, writing it down, somebody gets COVID, and there's going to be lawsuits.
Right.
And you know what? If you don't feel safe, or you don't think they're doing the job that you need, don't go in.
Right.
And vice versa. If you want people with masks, then make them wear a mask. But we got to take that responsibility ourselves, or this is going to be tragic.
And I'm going to get to the safety component more and the business consequences also. But the biggest problem that I have is the dishonesty of the numbers. And because, if you die from heart failure and you had COVID, it's a COVID death. If you, God forbid, fall out of your wheelchair and you hit your head and you die from the head wound and you have COVID, it's a COVID death. And they're not honest numbers. And I think that fueled the fear. But speaking of numbers, Todd has today's numbers.
Guys, Lycoming County has now increased by 2 positive cases to 164 total, 2,278 negative results. In comparison, Center County now stands at 152 cases. I believe the number that was cited earlier in the week was 149, so that would be a +3 over 3 days. And then 2,078 negatives reported for Center County. So if we go back and compare, Lycoming County is exactly 200 negatives ahead of Center County as of this moment.
Wow.
So there's a person that we follow on Twitter. His name is James Hassan. And he pointed out that the contradictory guidance is all over the place, which is something that you had said before, Commissioner, saying that, quote, nobody knew anything about it and the confusion and the conflicting reports were rampant. So he went on to say, and I think he's basically talking about the New Jersey governor, says, a lot of officials are doing the best that they could with limited information. But when you tell people that you can walk on the beach but not wade into the water, you kill public buy-in because people assume you're just winging it. Did you feel that the public officials from the state and some of the health department guidelines federally were people just winging it?
Carlos, I I hate to say this, but I believe it's broader than that. The inconsistencies of how you wanted to lead this country was just unbelievable. That you would shut my carpet store down that had 5 people a day that come in, and that a big box store have thousands. Okay, that's the inconsistency that made me start to wonder what's going on here. why would you want 1,000 people in one place instead of spreading it out over 5 over in one place?
Yes, but Commissioner, they were properly social distanced. They were all wearing face coverings, and they were all doing what they were supposed to be doing in those big box stores, right?
Right.
And the commissioner's concerns were shared with me. I don't have the exact day, but this was maybe 10 days after the initial shutdown. So let's say that second Friday in March was when everyone went crazy and started social distancing and the government lockdowns came. It was not much more than a week later when the commissioner called me and said, where is the justice of shutting me down but letting Lowe's stay open? And how does that affect commerce in our county? Why, you could talk about non-essential businesses, but why the ham-fistedness of keeping a Lowe's open and basically killing the competition? Shutting down businesses is one way of killing or as Robert says, collapsing the economy. Okay, shutting them down, but letting only one company or one entity in a sector operate and everybody else not operate is the fastest way to kill an economy. So that being said, I'd like to shift the conversation over to the business component. And can you give us an overview, as ugly as it is, of some of the stories that were brought to you from businesses in the county and the things that they had to endure based on this shutdown?
Well, let's start with some of the right from the beginning. I'm not sure how anybody in Congress can find a way of spending $2.3 trillion in 2 weeks. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And then to try to implement a plan for businesses who you're demanding shut down. And what compliances, if you're going to hand them out money. And we saw it all, the PPPs and the CARES Act. We saw it all. And some got it in time, some didn't, some still haven't. Okay. But just that alone, it was enough to create what I'd have to say, so much fear. And from a business owner's perspective, your employees are your family, okay? And so right from the beginning, can you imagine? I'm looking at this saying, what am I going to do with my employees? So I'm using my savings to keep them working, okay? Or I'm going to lay them off. And it was just a difficult time for everyone. And a matter of fact, it is still a difficult time for everyone. I've had many of the employees still not collect unemployment. And there again, listen, I'm going to tell you, I believe it's political, totally political. And if you follow Governor Wolf's, green and then into the no color, okay, he wants to raise the minimum wage from 12 to 15. He wants to keep raising this wage to open up fully. Okay, this is the DNC as far as I'm concerned. Everything they want, free health care. They want free child care. I mean, we can't afford it as businesses, but this is what they're saying to open up Pennsylvania to the normal. And, this is just wrong. So from that perspective, they were very confused and very, very afraid. Some were taking the right steps to say, okay, we're just going to keep looking at these CDC guidelines. We're going to comply. We're going to hopefully open. So let's be prepared. But I don't know if you're going to get into the green phase where we're going to be at on Friday, but you tell me how many restaurants or bars are going to really make any money at 50% occupancy. They won't. He has to reevaluate his green phase for these places, or they're going to lose money. So you've done no good for these people.
Robert, can you tell us the story of your friend in Clarion County that owns the bar?
Yeah, so a good friend of a good friend of mine who owns a bar and a restaurant, he was speaking to some people I know, and what he said was, despite the fact that they're going green, because there was short notice, it was hard for him to get employees back, to get supplies, to be able to totally open, and he is extremely worried that he doesn't understand what the green phase means. So he doesn't understand exactly how many people he's allowed in, exactly what has to happen in his bar when he's there. So he is still doing takeout only and acting as if he's under the yellow phase, because he's afraid that he will arbitrarily break some rule and have his liquor license removed. And it's not an unwarranted fear, because I know at least 2 times during this lockdown. The first time was this. He went outside. He opens from 4 to 8 for takeout only. He goes out in the parking lot and sees a woman sitting there and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't open till 4. She says, "I'm from the Liquor Control Board. I'm not a customer. I'm here to make sure that you're not serving people too early." And that same woman from the Liquor Control Board was also sitting out there another day, harassing people that were coming out saying, "How did you buy that beer? Who paid for it? How much beer did you buy at a time?" And all these questions to his customers. Now, this is in Freiburg, Pennsylvania, a small rural town in the middle of Pennsylvania. And he's getting hassled. That's where our resources are going, hassling a small business owner. So can you blame him because he doesn't have clarity of being afraid to opening up and breaking some arbitrary rule? And you heard what Tom Wolf said. He called people cowards. He threatened to withhold funding. He threatened to take away their liquor license. How many small business people in Lycoming County, Clarion County, and the rest of Pennsylvania are absolutely scared to death they'll lose their livelihood and afraid to even go into green phase or even know what it means?
Exactly. And moreover, what happens, and this is an article that was in the newspaper just last night, Commissioner. The owner of the Old Corner came out and said that although she was very excited that, we were going to open up, she was concerned about not only the federal guidelines, okay, from the CDC, the health guidelines, and the governor's guidelines from the state, but the county and the city guidelines. And that is very, very confusing to a lot of business owners who are looking to do the right thing. Okay. And that article to me signaled that there is a lot of businesses that want to do the right thing and they want to be able to conform. It's not like it's just civil disobedience for civil disobedience's sake. They want to be able to do it right, because they are afraid of the state pulling their certification or any other permits. So can you speak to any guidelines that businesses in Lycoming County should be aware of on the county level, beyond what the state is saying?
Carlos, we're not going to do, and I'll give my hats off to the mayor of Williamsport who waived that open container law, because he at least right now, he understands that there is confusion within the CDC and the state guidelines. And sometimes in government, you don't want to, when you're trying to create a law, you don't want it so specific that it strangles you. And I'll just give you an example. Okay. Bartenders must wear a mask unless, okay. So here's where they leave the door open for interpretation, unless he has a health issue that he can't, or if there's nobody this far away. You understand? Well, there's the confusion. Now is the time you needed to really be specific as to what you wanted to do. And I believe that they still didn't know what they wanted to do, And that's why they made it general. Because how can't you know that you can't open up a restaurant with 25% capacity? I mean, come on, he's a businessman. The governor's a businessman. How do you... Restaurants, they need volume to survive. And if you're going to shut them down to 50% capacity, how do they do that and keep the same amount of staff? You know, there's just a couple examples of the confusion that our business owners are going through right now, even though they're going to be in the green phase on Friday.
Robert, my biggest concern the entire time, from the very beginning, and you and I have talked about this, and I'd like you to comment on this, Commissioner, is how can the government and a governor, one of the 50 most powerful people in this country, have missed that Americans have ingenuity and Americans always find the how? How can they have missed that and not let us figure this out on our own? And the example that you alluded to, Commissioner, was Carlos can be trusted to do the best for himself. You know, I'm a 61-year-old man. I've had rheumatic fever twice in my life, and I have to take care of my heart, and I'm a diabetic. You know, no one talks more crap about the Bill of Rights and the Constitution than me, okay? Nobody. There might be people who are equal to me, and I'm talking to them right now. No one talks more crap than me, but you better be sure that you should know that I was quarantined, self-quarantined, since March 6th. I know what to do. I'm the very best person for me to know what to do for me. You don't have to. You don't have to tell me what to do. So how can the government and the leader of the state government have missed that we are the most ingenious, creative, and resourceful people on the face of the earth? Gentlemen?
No, I agree. And you heard the commissioner talk about how the greatness of the people of Lycoming County and how they came together to make PPE for people and things like that. That's the honest truth. All of this fear mongering even if you look at the Imperial College model, their do nothing scenario of 2.2 million dying that our federal government used as a basis for these lockdowns. That's absurd. There is no scenario in which people, particularly Americans, would do nothing. And so this idea is, I'm maybe more conspiratorial than others, but I believe that this is an agenda from the globalist and the Democratic Party where they want to be the mother of everyone in this country. They want everyone to rely on the government for sustenance. And so in their mind, people can't make their own best decisions for themselves. The government has to make those decisions for them.
Well, I know moms and they ain't it.
Well, before we go back to the commissioner for just a second, guys, I wanted to share with the commissioner that if anybody needs a face covering, we now have it at talkwaynessport.com for just $6. Just $6. And it says, I'm a Pennsylvanian, and I survived. It's got the governor, a caricature of the governor, and the secretary, a COVID logo on there as well. And it says, all I got was this lousy mask. We also have them in T-shirts, any color combination, yellow, green, red, and it's complete political satire, guys. It's not taking anything away from anybody we've lost in this thing, because there are so many people we shouldn't have lost during COVID-19.
Right.
It's because of overreaching policies, unfortunately, trying to do the right thing, and they overstep some bounds, as the commissioner can talk about, from the government side, that you're having to react at the county level, the local level, from things that are happening above you. You have absolutely no control over.
Exactly. And one of the things that I wanted to just say, we are at the noon hour, and we've kept the commissioner for a long time. I would like the commissioner to comment on the flip side of the fear coin with respect to making people feel comfortable and safe regarding what Lycoming County is doing to keep them safe. What are the things that Lycoming County is doing? And then I would like to invite the commissioner to spend 10 more minutes with us discussing liberty through the lens of what's happening in the country, across the country right now, regarding the protests based from the incident of the George Floyd incident. So could you talk to us a little bit, Commissioner, regarding why we should be and feel comfortable about what the county is doing to keep us protected?
I'm going to be biased, of course, but I've been out in the community, and our business owners and our people have complied with everything this governor's asked for. And they went over and above and beyond. When you take a look at, go into some of these businesses, you look at all the protection they put up, not only for their employees, but for the people that are going to come and be served by them. It's impressive. The stakeholders that are in our community, from the colleges to UPMC and Geisinger. UPMC is phenomenal. It's a phenomenal asset that we have here. They were engaged with us during the whole crisis, and to see their preparedness and to see them move into action and close. And listen, they lost a tremendous amount of revenue by keeping these beds available, and yet they didn't complain. They said, we're going to move on, but we have to shift gears. And how creative they were. My hat's off to Steve Johnson and the entire crew for being such a good partner to Lycoming County. Our strength is our people. And I think you can say that in almost every county in Pennsylvania. We have some of the best people, and they are strong, and they are tough. And they try not to depend upon the government for much. And that's what makes us a great community, and a rural community at that. And Carlos, I will stay on for another 10 minutes if you want me to. That's not a problem.
I just want to ask you, what would you say to Lycoming County area businesses if they have a problem or a concern? How would you ameliorate their concerns?
You need to call the county commissioners. Just because we went green does not mean we're going to take our fee off, the governor's fee off that fire.
Good.
Because this green, as I'm looking at it, and Rob, you know, is not much better. It's not much better for these businesses.
Right.
And we have to get him to reevaluate this as fast as possible, and more people are going to fall. And we don't need that.
And just real quick before we get on to the left-wing domestic terrorists burning down the country, you said that you think that some of Wolf's decisions are political. Let me just be as blunt as possible. Do you think that Tom Wolf is intentionally inflicting economic pain on people to help the Democrats' chances?
In hindsight, I do.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
They tried to tear this president down from even before he was elected. And it one thing after another, from the impeachment to this, to scandals, to Russia. And if that didn't work, gosh damn it, we've been saying there's going to be a recession since 1 year he was in there. And guess what? They got the recession. They created it.
Yeah, and let me just say real quick, thank you for saying that, and I wish more Republicans would follow your lead and go on the offense and have the nerve to say what is that blatant truth. This is manufactured. They're trying to cause harm to the working class in order to help themselves politically. So back to you, Carlos.
Well, I've known Robert for 12, 13, 14, 15 months. Yeah. We met when Robert ran for the 12th at the Conferee Convention. There hasn't been one day that I've spoken to him where Robert's main and chief complaint regarding the Republican Party is that the Republican Party will not fight back. We created this show solely on the idea that we might not be good Republicans. We just can't keep our mouths shut. I'm sorry. But we will always push back. You can count on us pushing back. We are like the Israelis. if you send rockets, we'll launch F-15s. That's our standing still position on everything. And it's the thing that binds me with Robert, and to a lesser extent with Todd. He really, as a journalist, can't really show his stripes, but in that sense, he believes in pushback, and he does the best that he can as a journalist in asking. I have to say probably that the questions that you've asked in the last 2 months is nearing 1,000 different questions. Correct, Todd?
Yeah, we do have two breaking news pieces here. A moment ago, the governor of Minnesota has fully mobilized their National Guard. The Pentagon's put the military police on high alert to go to Minnesota to quell the protest. The other thing that is not so much breaking news, but it did happen this week, is that Joe Biden gave a pat on the back to Governor Wolf. Governor Wolf then turned around and endorsed Joe Biden, at which Joe Biden said, "Who endorsed me?"
Does he have hair I could sniff? Yeah.
So as we go into hour two, the reasons for the Second Amendment suddenly seem so clear. Correct, Robert?
Yeah, I mean, let's follow the Democrats' logic out to extent. Now, I don't agree with all this, but their argument is, in Minneapolis, the entire police force is racist and running around killing black people, which is a lie, but fine, that's what they want to go with. They don't want the National Guard to come in because Trump's an evil racist Nazi, so they're afraid of him coming in. But they also only want that police force to be the only ones allowed to have guns. Now, you could see actual footage. By the way, this isn't racial, and Carlos, we've talked about this. Some of the inspiring footage from this is white, black, Asian, Hispanics, all standing together in front of stores armed because they saw that people were losing their livelihood. They were there to actually protest against the death of George Floyd in peaceful ways, armed, but they ended up defending business owners because the domestic left-wing terrorists were tearing down these businesses. What businesses survived? I'll give you a clue. It was the ones that were armed. Those that weren't armed, sorry, the government said, we don't care about you. We will cut tail and run. You're on your own. Too bad you didn't arm yourself and defend yourself. I don't care if you're on the left or on the right. This situation should tell you, you cannot always count on the government to protect you. They will cut tail and run and don't care about you if it gets too heated. And at the end of the day, as a human being, it's up to you to protect yourself in a peaceful and justifiable manner. And that's what our founding fathers understood with the Second Amendment.
Commissioner, nothing is more picturesque of incompetent governmental leadership than the fact that 4 Minneapolis police officers in the George Floyd case weren't arrested.
You're correct.
We went from the teenage mayor of Minneapolis suspending them with pay at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then tweeting at 3:06 in the afternoon that he fired them. And then he writes in the tweet, this was the right thing to do, applauding his own actions. And the right thing to do was to have fired those police officers based on the 2-minute and 20-second video of a police officer putting his knee on the back of a man that was laid prone and handcuffed for 2 minutes and 20 seconds that we saw. Nobody, including anybody on this stream, is bigger pro-police than me. Nobody. That man should have been arrested. Why was he not, in your political expert opinion?
Well, you can look at it as maybe racist. It could be a matter, and I'm going to the question: why would you do what that police officer did? Is it a lack of training? Is it a someone who is a racist? Is it, the one and most important thing is the man that was on the ground, you do what you do because you have probable cause. That doesn't mean that you're going to give him the verdict and kill him. Okay? This was bad. This is as bad as you could get. And I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't say that, but he can be lucky that wasn't my brother.
Yeah.
Well,
no, we understand why people are angry.
Right. The rage is justifiable, the way it's carrying out. By the way, 95% of the domestic terrorists couldn't care less about George Floyd. It's about their communist overthrowing America agenda or being opportunistic and looting. But yeah, I agree.
Especially the ones that are going out tonight.
Right. But I agree, Commissioner. My question is, as someone who is in a position of leadership in a county and seeing the obvious failures that we see that occurred here in Minneapolis, it seems to me like it's either incredible gross incompetence, or I will posit this to you to see what you think. Is there again a chance that the leadership in Minneapolis was intentionally stoking this rage because they thought that somehow that would be good for them on a national level, that they would be able to blame Donald Trump or blame the Republicans? Because I can't see how you could think, we'll say that we're not going to arrest these people. We'll pull the police out and let the riots go for 3 nights. I can understand the first night being overwhelmed. 3 nights, even after the National Guard was sent there, and they still, whoopsie daisy. And now today you see the governor blaming it on right-wing white supremacists. So is there a chance that this was the plan all along, that they set up to, not that they intentionally wanted this man killed, but they were opportunistic and set up the reaction to invoke anger and racial division amongst people?
I can't believe that. I don't want to believe it. But are they prepared when something like this happens? Elected officials need to always have a plan, and obviously these people didn't. And especially when you live in liberal communities, okay? I would think the far left and the far right are pretty much aligned on they don't want government interference, either extreme.
That's a great point.
But I can't believe that he would do this intentionally. I would pray that this wasn't intentional, but it can get out of control fast. And for them to do what they did at the police station, or protesting, whatever, that's one thing. But to go destroy businesses that had nothing to do with this, and they were their own friends in their own communities that supported those places. And then, like you said, Rob, I think there's a lot of people that are anarchists.
Yep.
And they're the ones that are trying to, and they're on the left side, and they're the ones that are trying to cause the havoc and make our country destabilized. We live by the rule of law, and if we lose that, then we've lost America. Harder actions must be taking place on these rioters. You can't let them. You can't let people throw water on cops.
Right.
That's the start.
From a governmental leadership position, which you're in, do you think that if you were the mayor of Minneapolis, you would have said, could you see your way clear based on the evidence that most of us have seen, the video, the 4 officers that were there, the fact that the man was prone and wasn't jeopardizing the lives of the police officers, based on those things, just the plain things that we could see with our eyes, do you think it was a lapse of governmental leadership of the mayor not calling for the arrests of these police officers?
Total incompetence. I don't need to say any more.
Yeah, I think that this is what exacerbated it. No, Todd?
No, we're living in the post-Freddie Gray world. I mean, we all got to see Baltimore burn to the ground, right? In the aftermath of the Freddie Gray arrest, I mean, the guy was paralyzed as soon as he's thrown in the back of a police van with excessive force. Those police officers have been dealt with. The leadership in the city of Baltimore has been dealt with. But to watch a leader of a city say, let it burn, it was unbelievable. I think the mayor of Atlanta has it right.
Yeah, she's
you
a
are
hero.
burning to the ground. You're burning to the ground the businesses that have these people that have saved their life savings, as Commissioner said a moment ago, to put into a business to help their community, to hire people and to give back to the community, and you're burning it to the ground. What happened was absolutely wrong. It'll be dealt with, but it doesn't give you a license to go in and steal stuff and then burn it to the ground.
Yeah, the mayor of Atlanta. Have you seen the video, Commissioner, of the mayor of Atlanta and her comments yesterday?
No. I'm sorry, I have not.
I am going to do this on Monday. I am going to call her office and personally congratulate her. She's a Democratic mayor. Her name is Keisha Bottoms. And she did the very best 4 minutes and 40 seconds of a political statement that I've seen in years. And I know, Robert, you've seen it.
Yep.
I'm assuming, Todd, you have also. I trust her. I'm going to call her up and tell her, congratulations, you are a great American. And this is one of the most inspiring things that I've ever heard. And you couldn't tell that she was, and forgive me, God forgive me. I'm not saying that all Democrats are unpatriotic, but it is the greatest thing I've ever heard a Democrat say regarding our country since President Kennedy. And to encapsulate what she said was basically this: go home.
Yep.
Get off the streets and go home. You are embarrassing the legacy of George Floyd
yep.
and of Martin Luther King. You're doing protesting wrong. You're putting my sons and my kids' lives in danger and other people's lives in danger for no reason. Go home. It was one of the most beautiful things. And I'll be very honest, I had yet to figure out how smart the DNC is, but if they don't consider this woman to be a running candidate for Joe Biden, they're dumber than they look. It was that great of a speech. I will give you the last word, Robert, before we ask the commissioner on his final thoughts on anything that we've talked about today.
Yeah, and I just, what I'll say, Commissioner, is I think that one of the things is when you are in positions of crisis as a leader, that's what you were put there for. It's easy to be a commissioner or to be a mayor or to be a governor when things are going well. But when we have all these crises coming up, such as, the lockdown with COVID or these riots and things like that, that's what makes your muster. And one of the things that frustrates me, you could be from any end of the spectrum, whether it's incompetence or it's corruption of these leaders, but they are failing over and over again. And I just wonder, in your experience, what would you say to people? Like, how important is it to have competent leaderships in these times of crisis? And just how important is it for them to actually start voting people in? Of whatever party, I'm not trying to make it a partisan point, they actually are competent leaders that could get us through crisis. Nope. Maybe we lost him, or maybe I was mealy-mouthed in my question.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The most important thing I've learned as being a county official is that you must be prepared. You must run planning programs, trainings. That's your job. Your job is to be able to protect public safety. And no matter how many different scenarios you may run, there's always something that you're going to miss. So you look back and say, how can we improve it? And I'm certain we've made some mistakes,
sure,
and along the way, and that then gets recorded and memorialized for life. So it goes into your plan. so that you don't make the same mistakes over and over and over again. I applaud, Carlos, what you said about that lady in Atlanta. She understands that you are going to make it worse. We are going to have to take more action. There will be more shootings. And what she's really telling you is that this is America, and we are a nation of laws. Now, you better behave or you're going to get the consequences. Very, very good statement she made.
What does tomorrow look like in Lycoming County, Commissioner?
To me, I'm going to be an optimist because I know our people. Okay, I know what they've been doing to prepare for the green phase. They're going to go to work, and we're going to open up, and people are going to support the small businesses. I look at it myself. We opened up, and we've never been busier. Construction's been out of sight, and the people are going to sit there and support their local restaurants and whatnot, and be innovative and creative on how they're going to serve until we get back to normal. And you'll notice we're not going to talk about the new norm. We're going back to normal,
right?
In Lycoming County.
And what can we do to help?
I think you're doing
not only the community, but you specifically.
Participation. I'm going to give you an example, even though we didn't talk about it today. Our mail-in ballots. And this is, Rob, this is something you should be looking at.
Yep.
I do not agree with this legislation, Act 77. This must be repealed as soon as possible. Here is a scenario that's happening in Lycoming County right now. We did our mail-in ballots. Okay, 10,000 people requested mail-in ballots. Guess what? Somehow they didn't receive them.
Yep.
Not all 10,000, but a majority of them are not going to be able to do it now because it's not going to make the deadline. Now, why? We mailed them out in time, but the post office didn't. Now, do you want to, we can start conspiracy theories now. You've got all our ballots in rural PA, and now people may not be voting because they didn't get their ballot and they don't want to go because of COVID. This is ridiculous. We need to repeal this act as fast as we can and not even have it for the general election.
And I don't want to throw fuel in the fire. But is it a coincidence that Speaker Pelosi asked for a bailout of the U.S. Postal Service, given the failures of the mail-in ballots being delivered in the state of Pennsylvania? I'm not saying it's connected, but boy, do we have a lot of work to do.
Hey, if thousands of people could go riot, then they could go vote, right? Doesn't it seem? Right? All of a sudden, or you, as my video I did earlier, apparently COVID can't infect, the noble, peaceful protesters lighting freedom fires and burning down cities. COVID doesn't affect them. But if you want to go vote, you can't do that. You'll hurt people. If you want to go to church, you'll hurt people. What a joke. Yeah. It's just.
And you deserve an
asked him for 27 minutes ago. He's reclaiming his time.
Yeah.
Yes. Commissioner, for Robert and for Todd, I want to let you know that you're welcome on the show anytime. And I can't guarantee that we're going to be treating you as nicely as we did today. But we care about you, and we respect you, and we admire your toughness and your single-mindedness in protecting the Constitution first. And you have a friend in this show, and thank you very much for coming on and spending some time with us and tell us the situation in Lycoming County.
Thanks, Carlos, and to you, Rob and Todd. I know you all three personally, and you are patriots. You research like nobody else has, and that's refreshing. because we really need the facts, especially during a crisis. We really need the facts. And I can't thank you guys enough, and I'd love to come back on your show.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, bye.
So, moving right along, I wanted to comment.
By the way,
the-
Carlos, it was
Yeah.
easier for him to leave the call than it was to join the call, just so we can get that on the record and
Yes,
point that
that's
out.
true.
That's good. Yeah.
So, Todd, the founders never really envisioned the apathy that exists in our country with respect to embracing and the knowledge of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the things that we should know about civics. But they really were spot on with respect to knowing that the chaos would be, correct?
No question. And the forward thinking that they had several hundred years ago in drafting these documents and the founding of our country, it's unbelievable to look that far into the future and know that absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's why we have the branches of government we do. That's why we have the checks and balances that we do, or are supposed to have, right? And just all these freedoms that they outline for us as a free society, knowing that one day they could be infringed upon, and look where we are in 2020. They are being infringed upon. The one point I wanted to make to the commissioner about the numbers and what we're hearing from government above the local level is, it's a phrase I've picked up on: consistently inconsistent. The guidance has been consistently inconsistent. The numbers have been consistently inconsistent. That's one thing we can rely upon. You're going to get a daily report that's consistent every day, right? But it's as inconsistent as the day is long.
Yeah.
And the question that I have for you is that I always go back to the same thing, is that you're right there on the battlefield. You're right there on the front line. Do you ever contemplate the fact that they don't look as governmental leaders, the governor, okay? Today's Saturday. Monday, you are going to have one of only 10 seats at the table at a press conference.
Yeah, potentially.
Okay? You're there in live and sense around, and do you sense the gravitas of the position that they're in as governmental leaders, or do you ever wonder what goes through your mind, wondering why they might not? Why are they just dialing it in instead of taking this so much more seriously?
Okay, so look, this is the perspective I'm going to bring to this thing, okay? I'm not there to make it a clown show like we see a lot of times in the White House press briefing. I'm not there to make a name for myself. I'm there on behalf of the citizens of Lycoming County and the citizens of Commonwealth, Pennsylvania, to get you answers, right? And when I get answers, and we're getting answers, just because you answer the question doesn't mean it's an answer.
Right.
So now I'm going to have an opportunity potentially in person Monday or Wednesday in Harrisburg. And if I don't get a satisfactory answer, I'm going to push back and go, but you didn't answer my question. Right? You answered it, but you didn't answer it. We're not getting that right now. And here's why, Carlos, Robert, and everybody watching and listening. The metrics are gone. The metrics were gone 2 weeks in. Now that the numbers don't stand up, that narrative is
COVID
gone.
metrics.
The COVID metrics,
right.
They're gone. It's predominantly affecting nursing homes. You need to move heaven and earth to protect those nursing homes.
Yep.
And they're still not. 12 weeks in, they're still not doing it. So that's really going to be the driving force of what I'm looking for from an answer standpoint, amongst other things that I'm playing close to the chest on potentially Monday and Wednesday. And I got to give great thanks to the people that are helping get me into that room and into those very, very coveted seats, the way they're changing the dynamic. Because for the first 10, 12 weeks of this thing, I've been on the front line virtually through the virtual newsroom, right? Well, our local newspaper has sat idly by and played copy and paste with the Associated Press. The biggest story in COVID since it hit was Lycoming County going green, and they deferred yesterday to the Associated Press.
Yep.
And played copy and paste. It's malfeasance of journalism.
It's laziness. And the other thing is, they're not journalists, not just them, but all over this country. They're not journalists. They're propagandists, or they're activists, or at best, they're cheerleaders. But they're not there to actually have the interest of the constituents at heart. They're there to help a certain side win. And when you enter with that mindset, the irony is when you see all these press, celebrations, they pat themselves on the back and they say, oh, democracy dies in darkness and we hold truth to power. And the press is so important, a free press. They're right. The free press is so important. It's unfortunate we only have a handful of people like you that actually are a free press. The rest of them are just propagandists and cheerleaders, and we're worse off for it. That's why we've been in this lockdown as long as we have, because people aren't aware.
The story I did the other day, when there was a lack of transparency from the Department of Health, after the phone call with the county commissioners, Chuck Kiesling, Representative Everett, Matt McDermott, after that phone call, I knew to a certainty that within a week, Lycoming County was going to go green. And here's why. Here's the methodology behind that. The State Department of Health and the governor's office is not going to want the metrics behind their decision-making released to the public ever. Ever. So instead of providing the data points and the metrics and the modeling, air quote, modeling you're using, you'd rather let counties go green.
Yep.
Figured out your game. Figured out your game in a Wizard of Oz. You're behind a curtain. Don't look behind a curtain. I've seen this story before. I've covered it. Again, not looking to make a name for myself. I've seen it before.
It's one of the funniest things I think I've ever heard you say. And I can't really say exactly what your words were here. I would, but you basically said, you basically said that the state would rather Lycoming County or anybody go green before they give us what the guidelines really are.
Right.
That's right.
It's tragic.
What does that say about our country and the
said
responsibility
it yesterday? The governor said it in a press conference yesterday. He changed the model.
Yep.
On the fly.
On the fly in real time.
Yeah, that's a hockey term, by the way. So
sorry, I put him in an on-man rush situation. I'm sorry. I had Crosby on one wing, Genson on the other. I'm sorry. And Malkin, well, he's kind of trailing the play. That's another story for another day.
Touche. Robert. So Todd was just talking about the lack of journalistic will, and I'm very interested in the idea of will, journalistic will, personal will, governmental will. Why does the government lack the political will to defend themselves?
Well,
and what I mean by that is, why would the governor, the mayor of Portland, the mayor of Minneapolis, the mayor of Baltimore, certain governors like in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, why do they lack the political will to defend themselves and defend their constituencies? What is it about this? And I'm sorry, we're not perfect. This aspect of our American character that keeps showing up in the form of lack of will, going along to get along, going out with your friends to riot because you have nothing better to do. What is it about our American character that's broken, and from that point of view of lack of will?
So there's two things to really look at this. The first is, in general, why this is true of people all through America is because we're a specialized society and it's kind of the metrics of capitalism and individualism. We all have our little special niche. So, I do my job, I do home health care, or I do this show. Other people have professionalism that they're good at. And we've fallen into this category, and you just kind of accept the hierarchy of things. So you assume that the people that are in positions of leadership have competency. You assume they're there because they're competent, and therefore you lack the will to look into things yourself. And I have this discussion with people all the time. Well, trust the experts. I'm not going to look at the COVID numbers myself. I'll trust the experts, or I trust the politicians have my best interest, or I'll trust the media. If there was a story here, the media would have said so. If they're not saying it, there must not be a story here, and that applies all over the place. Now, to your specific question about these governors and these leaders, by the way, I don't think it's a coincidence most of the ones you mentioned are Democrats. Here's the issue. Here's why you won't see Wolf defend himself, Governor Wolf. Because if you're a Democrat, you have controlled the narrative. The establishment Democrats, you have controlled the narrative for so long by controlling academia, controlling the mainstream media, controlling the entertainment industry, controlling Silicon Valley, that you've coasted through life never being challenged. Everyone just agrees, oh, you're morally superior. Yep, the Democrats are the party of the poor people, and they're the party of, inclusion, and they're great people, and everyone on the right are evil Nazi racists. And so when you go through life like that, sometimes a crisis hits, and all of a sudden people say, hey, we got some serious questions for you. It is beyond evident to me that Governor Tom Wolf is flabbergasted. He would have no idea how to respond to a serious question from Todd. He would just be like, in his head, he's thinking, how dare you? How dare you ask me these? Don't you know I'm superior to you? People don't challenge me,
I'm an elite.
And I think that that's what you see constantly. And, I think we'll get into this more, but, when you factor that in with the fact that then, along with that belief in never being challenged, it's led to a country where we can't agree on basic truths. Literally, as we speak, the people in positions of leadership in Minnesota, along with people at CNN and other mainstream media outlets, are saying that the riots in these cities, are you ready for this, are right-wing white supremacists. So when you see Black Lives Matter and Antifa smashing buildings, don't believe your eyes, that's really right-wing white supremacists. If we live in a country, because of the indoctrination and the unchallenged nature of these extreme left-wing views for so long, because they've controlled the narrative, that we can't even agree that riots in these inner cities clearly aren't the KKK. It's clearly not who it is. I have no love for white supremacists. I despise them. Don't get me wrong. But for them to try to say, oh, we've made a mistake, we left this left-wing domestic terrorism get out of control. I know, we'll just lie and say it's right-wing domestic terrorism. It's truly despicable.
Todd, based on what Robert just said, does it show that the opposition is at the bottom of the barrel? If this is what they're saying, if our eyes tell us something different than what they're saying, are we at the bottom of the barrel with respect to what they have to counter policy-wise or politically in this country in May of 2020 in a presidential election? That's part one of the question. Part two is, what's wrong with the governor sitting down with Todd Bartlett and having an interview and making his case?
So it's interesting that you point that out, and this was not in the pre-production meeting, but I have asked for a one-on-one with Governor Wolf for weeks. I have yet to be granted a one-on-one, either by phone or video, Skype, whatever, with Governor Wolf to address some significant questions that I have during the COVID crisis and then going forward. I've been one of the only people asking the threshold question. And I continue to ask the threshold question of, what is life after green? Remember, just weeks ago, we heard that no county would move to green before every county was in yellow. Obviously, that's not the case, because the numbers don't support not being in green or out of green completely. If you recall when this all got started, I asked the question of Secretary Levine. It's all documented, talkwaynesword.com. You can go look it up. It's there. In her own words, why are the case counts in rural Pennsylvania so low? Because by the mere this was the response, by the mere fact of where rural Pennsylvania is located, there's already social and population distancing, right? So the case counts are lower. This is why Sullivan County had to sit in yellow or red with 2 cases of COVID for nearly 10 weeks. Are you kidding me?
That's outrageous. That's actually admitted. So she admits, oh, you're already properly socially distancing by the nature of where you are. We're going to keep you locked down anyways. That's unbelievable.
Commissioner Metzger made the point on the phone
Lycoming County Commissioner.
Lycoming County Commissioner Scott Metzger made the point during the phone call. It can take you the better part of an hour and a half to go across Lycoming County.
Yep.
It's the largest geographic county in the state. 164 cases after 12 weeks. After 12 weeks. That's not 164 today. It's 164 over 12. And we're on lockdown? We're not allowed to make our own decisions? It makes no sense. Now, to your point, Carlos, about all of our freedoms, I'm a member of the press, a member of the media. Doggone proud of it. I got to tell you, I have family in law enforcement. If I see members of law enforcement in riot gear, masked up, tear gas mask, not the old little N95 that's not going to help your pepper spray or tear gas, and they're going, we're taking over the street, you might want to move. I'm not taking 2 seconds to ask them a question going, where do you want me to go? I'm going the other way.
Right.
Sorry. That way you prevent what happened on national television in real time of a crew being taken into custody. They weren't, quote unquote, arrested. They were detained. There's a difference. And you know why they were detained? For their safety and safety of law enforcement, because they don't know who those people are. Even if you flash the media credential, they don't know who you are.
Right. And they have the right to do that. But of course, you know, in a social media world where you could see that video be uploaded right away, you make these snap judgments. So that's why I'm asking. That's why I'm asking you. The first part of the question is, are they at the bottom of the barrel with respect to being able to have anything to offer politically or otherwise? When they say that it's right-wing supremacists that are rioting.
It's the same reason a school district weaponized their tax office against me to have me arrested, to try to have me silenced. Because they can't tell us the story.
Exactly. That's exact.
Oh, well, we ran an investigation and we did everything we're supposed to do. Oh, really? Because the paper trail says you didn't file a report in real time for 5 months.
And only after you were asked by another police.
From another jurisdiction in another state. Right.
And let me make something clear.
We don't believe you anymore.
Let me make this clear, both in your story right there, Todd, and in general. Our side is not censoring anyone. I will fully agree that maybe I'm not right about everything. I welcome people to disagree with me.
You're not?
I know, it's surprising, right? But
Robert,
you
want to let him talk?
Yeah, I know. Isn't that weird? Twitter is censoring, right now, they're censoring the president of the United States. And finally they did, because that forced some action, because when it was just us, regular folk, that were being censored, there was no action taken. Why, if these people are on the side of truth, and Carlos, I've told you this over and over, the amount of that a political party or ideology wants to censor others is directly proportional to how terrible their ideas are. Exactly. So the worse your idea, when you say bottom of the barrel, you're exactly right. The only way you could convince American people that the riots right now are from right-wing white supremacists is to totally control the narrative. Because if anyone sees the footage with their own objective eyes, they're going to be like, that's ridiculous. And I just want to bring up 4 stories just from this weekend, 2 of which we've been talking about. And explain how We can't agree on the most basic facts. So how are we going to come together as a country? We saw the riots. First take on the riots where, oh, these are noble, peaceful protesters. They're good. Now it's changed to, oh, no, wait, they're white supremacists. When we know that that's just blatantly not the truth. We see the COVID numbers, like Todd's saying. The numbers don't add up to what they're claiming. But they still keep claiming they do. Despite the fact that you could look at the data and show, no, you were wrong. They say, no, we were right. Then you see the case with the Twitter censorship. We could see that they were wrong when they censored Trump and they said, oh, actually, there is no fraud with mail-in voting. That's a lie, which they later had to admit. And then lastly, this case with Michael Flynn. The transcripts have been released proving that the Obama and Mueller intel agencies lied when they said Michael Flynn was harming this country and was lying about conversations with sanctions. They lied. Mueller and Obama lied. They spied and ruined a hero, a patriot who fought for this country's life, because they didn't like him politically. Right now, if you go to the left-wing media in this country, they are looking at the same transcripts you can, saying, see, this proves we were right. If we can't look at written words they're written words, and agree on what those words say, how can we come together as a country? We're literally, I didn't even think until this morning that we would have this. Literally, you can see Black Lives Matter riot and say, well, one, that's a good riot. And if you disagree with me that it's a bad riot, and that was the evil right-wing white supremacists that did it. How can we come together as a country?
I thought for a long time, going back to the George Floyd case, my last point is, I thought that the existential threat to journalists would be the truth. Never did I ever think it would be the mob. Robert? Yeah,
I agree. And that's exactly what we see. We see that the truth doesn't matter anymore. And you've seen this. I'm sorry. I'm biased. I get that. I'm Republican. I ran as a Republican. I'm conservative. I call out Republicans all the time. I call conservatives out. I called Trump out for what I thought was his support of this lockdown. It was terrible. I do that. But let's not kid ourselves. Those 4 stories I just told you, these riots, the situation with COVID, although the Republicans had something to do with that, but mostly Democrats. We had the Twitter censorship, and we had the Flynn situation. That's all the establishment Democrats. That's the corruption that we see for them. And until the Republicans fight back against this is one weekend of these stories. Here, you want to hear a pro tip? Hey, pro tip, if you're in Lycoming County or any of these other counties that are staying yellow, or even if you've went green and you own a small business and you want to open up, here's what you do. Just tell Governor Wolf, oh, we're supporting Black Lives Matter and the riots that are occurring around the country. That's why we're opening up. Then you won't be hassled at all. Governor Wolf will come give you a big pat in the back and tell you how much of a patriot you are. Now, if you just want to open up because you want to feed your family or provide a service to the community, you're a coward. That's what Governor Wolf called you, and you actually are causing people to die. That's how insane of a situation we are in this country right now. They said that when people went to Harrisburg and protest about this lockdown, that was violence, that was cowardice, that was leading to the deaths of people. The same people that said that look at people burning down cities, shooting guns, looting stores, and they say, oh, what heroes, that's free speech, what a great thing. Oh, we don't have to worry about the lockdown. COVID can't affect the rioters. It doesn't affect them. It just affects you people that want to go to church or want to go to your job. I mean, how can you rationalize with these people? And until the Republicans start fighting back, we're going to keep losing over and over and over again.
Well, I know 3 people at least that will fight back.
Yeah.
My question to you is, could you, for the regular person that's interested in liberty, that isn't as involved in politics interest-wise as much as us, give us a 2-minute overview of what happened this week regarding General Flynn's case and how that affected the orders and the DOJ and his defense team and the FBI. What happened today? Give us a little bit, just sure, encapsulated in 30 seconds, and then give us another 2 minutes as to what happened this week that affected it and why that's important.
Flynn was the director. He was the national security advisor that was coming in. So Trump gets elected, but as you know, you have to wait to be sworn in. So during that period, what administrations do is they contact their counterparts. So you contact your counterpart in Russia and in the UK and in France, etc. So you could hit the ground running. That's what Flynn did. Obama didn't like Flynn because Flynn was someone that was against the Iran deal and other Obama policies. So Obama, and as was his whim, decided he's going to be corrupt and spy on people. He might not have directly given the order, but this was what his agencies did. So they spied on Flynn. They committed a felony by the unmasking wasn't the felony, by leaking it to the press, though. That was a felony. So they committed that felony. And basically the press for 3 years has said, oh, Flynn pled guilty. That proves that he was a Russian spy. He was a Russian asset. He did something really terrible. Mueller, and the special counselor Mueller, he claimed the reason that they charged Flynn with a crime was that Flynn lied in talking about sanctions to the Russian ambassador. That's a lie. Even the 302s are the notes from the FBI. The FBI said, we don't think he lied. Even the notes had Flynn merely saying, that conversation about sanctions could have happened, but I don't remember. Remember, how many times have you seen Hillary Clinton or James Comey in front of Congress say, I can't recall? Well, according to Mueller and the Obama team, that's a crime and that needs to be charged. So anyways, the story this week is, there's so much more to this, but here's the bare bones. The transcripts were finally released. DNI, Director of National Intelligence, on an interim basis, Richard Grenell decided, you know what? I'm going to leave the American people say exactly what Flynn's conversation was with this Russian. And so they released it, and it turns out that the Obama administration and the Mueller team lied. It turns out that there was no talk of sanctions. There was talk of diplomats being expelled from the United States, which was admitted to the FBI by General Flynn. But the idea that he talked about sanctions was a lie, and the transcripts prove it. But the people that pushed the Russiagate hoax for 3 years in the mainstream media are looking at these transcripts, people like Eric Swalwell, people like Adam Schiff, that lied to you and said, we see proof that Trump and his team illegally conspired with Russians. They're out there today saying, see, the transcripts were released. This proves that General Flynn was a traitor and a criminal. And it literally does the exact opposite of that. You want to know, if you're listening and this all sounds confusing, here's what General Flynn's big crime was. You ready for this? This is why the Democrats hate him and the FBI went after him. Because our country sanctioned and kicked diplomats out from Russia, or we kicked Russian diplomats out, and Flynn had the horrible, horrible crime of picking up the phone and saying, hey, let's try not to escalate this. We want to work together to have good relations and, fight against mutual enemies like Islamic terrorism. That's it. That's the crime that Flynn committed that started a 3-year investigation into, Trump's team must be in cahoots with Russia to do illegal stuff. That's the crime.
And the information that was released this week absolutely absolves Flynn of everything he was accused of. And everything that was in those transcripts is exactly what Flynn said. And
real quick, it's important to know, the FBI and the Mueller team withheld those transcripts from Flynn and his defense team, which is illegal. Imagine
for years.
Imagine that you're accused of a crime and the prosecutor that's accusing you has evidence that proves you didn't commit that crime. Imagine that. And they lie. And then the judge...
we had a presidential candidate that did the same thing in California.
Right. And then the judge says that Flynn is like a traitor who committed treason, which the punishment for is that. That's the impartial judge.
The judge that was judging him on that case.
That's exactly right. And that judge also saw the evidence that exonerated Flynn and also knew that the prosecutors didn't give it to him. But instead of saying, wow, this is messed up, he said, you've committed I'm likening you to committing treason, which is the death penalty. All the while knowing he never committed a crime. It's unbelievable.
So let's push back, Robert and Todd. Let's push back.
Nice shirt, Todd, by the way.
Then why did he plead guilty?
Sure, I can take that. One, it's ironic that the same Democrats that will tell you, the law enforcement's corrupt, blah, 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 and they'll, turn on Netflix. You can see a dime a dozen documentaries of people that were coerced into confessions that ended up not being true. But the reason he pled guilty was because they threatened to come after his son on unrelated crimes that were also trumped up. And so if you're a father and look, here's the thing about the FBI. When they come for you, it doesn't matter if you're innocent or guilty. They will find a way to entrap you, as the Flynn case shows, as Papadopoulos shows, as Carter Page shows. And even if they can't get a conviction, they will financially ruin you. And so when you're a father and you're like, you know what, I'm a patriot, I'm going to fight back against this. And they're like, okay, maybe you will. But how about your son? Because we're going to ruin his life too. So Flynn bit the bullet and said, okay, I guess I'll plead guilty. And it was all about, because it's not about justice. It was about them trying to overthrow an election. It was about them trying to get to Donald Trump. And so they knew, if we could get Flynn to admit that he's guilty of something, that allows us to go in the mainstream media for 3 years and say, see, someone connected to Trump doing illegal things with Russia proves that the investigation's justified. And it was all garbage from the get-go.
And with media cover fire, Todd, it was very easy to do. But my question to you is, can you foresee a scenario where you could be on the side of the New York Times, the Atlantic, or the Washington Post in going after someone, a target, a journalistic target, with absolutely no evidence? Can you foresee a scenario where you would be on their side?
So I've actually been accused of there's no there, it's a hoax in this whole Myrtle Beach story, when in fact, there's a hell of a lot of there, as we've seen in 2 states, which is exactly why people didn't want it to come out. For me, I'd probably resign. I mean, and it's like the thing I said earlier. The curve was flat within 2 weeks.
Right.
Okay? The numbers bared that out. If you're going to perpetuate that kind of a lie, you need to resign. Right? But that's not what we're dealing with in 2020. It's ride or die to the end. They don't want him to be the president. They've proven that time in, time out, right? They're already setting up impeachment 2 if he does get reelected.
Yep.
That we're going to see that in 21, 22, 23, 24. It's the most ridiculous thing I've seen in my 46 years on the planet. It's ridiculous.
So I will end with this, gentlemen. Yes, they're going to ride this out to the end because they're looking